Every day you make choices, conscious choices. And I think to go through life with a sense of appreciation and choosing to be appreciative makes all the difference. I think in our darkest days, and I hire against that quality, I think you can figure that out about somebody fairly quickly of how they approach things. Do they have a gratitude about where they find themselves in life? And when we were being literally punched in the face, if you will, by the FDA, we still together kind of marveled at what we had this opportunity to do.
You're listening to Staring at the World with BoDeans, Kurt Newman, a T. Torrance Productions original podcast.
Hey everybody, it's Kurt Newman. Today on the Staring at the World podcast, we're going to talk to Cindy Eckert, who's someone who decided they wanted to start a pharmaceutical company from the ground up, and she did it, which is a pretty incredible story. And believe it or not, it deals with a lot of creativity. So we're going to talk about sex too. So stick around and find out. Hey everybody, I'm Kurt Newman. Today we are staring at the world with Cindy Eckert, who is the founder of some great pharmaceutical companies. I just kind of a founder in general. You've done so much, and we're going to talk about a lot of stuff here today. I kind of want to start in the middle of your story and go back from there a bit and then come back around to the beginning.
I love it.
Let's tell everybody kind of what you're famous for these days is your company, Sprout. You brought a drug to the market that was on the street, kind of known as female Viagra, but it has a technical name. I don't know if it's Addy.
Mm-hmm.
So that was based on, men have lots of sexual drugs to take for dysfunction and stuff, but there hadn't been something for women. So you took it upon your shoulders to find something like that and bring it to market.
Yeah.
Can we just kind of start from you getting out of school and starting to work in pharmaceutical and take it through Sprout, just so everybody watching can get a sense of what you really did here? Because there was a lot of money involved and stuff, but I'd rather us work through that.
Yeah.
So.
I got out of school and, well, first, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to sit down with you.
It's a pleasure.
I get out of school and my only objective was to work for the best. Like, how could I find the best to go learn from right out of school? Right. Well, it just so happened that the year I graduated, Fortune's most admired company was Merck, and it was a pharmaceutical company. And I always tease it could have been any industry that year, and I probably would have directed my energy there. So I went to work for Merck. It took me a little while to get the job. I didn't get it at first pass. Got the job and fell in love with the science, but not the industry. So in the, big companies, I was a bit disillusioned by being just a number. I thought I had some really great ideas and they should be listening to me. I have two big brothers, Kurt, who would tell you that that's the story of my whole life that I should be listened to. And so here I am in a company. I love what it can do for people, but not necessarily how it gets it done.
I know the feeling. I mean, we were on a major label.
Yeah.
And we were just another of many, many artists. And you fight for attention and some recognition.
Yeah.
So,
and I think for people who just have this drive to make a mark or, whatever that may be, to really be impact driven, it just doesn't fit. So that started my chasing innovation. So I went from big company to smaller company, the people doing the really cool stuff, the cutting edge science. And it led me down the path to ultimately being maybe crazy enough to start my own. I can remember when I said I was going to start a pharmaceutical company from scratch and people were like, I don't think so. That requires a lot of capital.
That's some big ambition. Yeah.
Some big ambition. But I decided, I had enough of a track record in the industry. And I figured there are other people like me in this field, love the field, passion for innovation, probably not that inspired in the environments that they're in. And so that was my first thesis, if you will. I started a company called Slate. Right. I truly named it Slate. Clean slate. I'm doing it on my own terms. Right. Here's how I'm going to build it. I wrote my 8 principles on a paper towel, like all good founders. And I was off to the races. And I built a company with one of the male sexual health drugs. So here I am, not only building a pharma company from scratch, but doing it in a space for men. And that was the beginning of, that lesson was about building a company, building a culture. And from that, I got a beat on this science for women. And, in the world of sexual medicine and sexuality, the researchers study men and women alike. And I had this aha moment that here I am. There were at the time 25 different solutions for men approved by the FDA and not a single one for women.
Did you on Slate, did you work on a male drug because you just thought it was a hot market? For the timing was right and everything, and it made sense to try to fit into that.
It's funny. It must be that I'm an Irish Catholic girl. My mom wishes I wouldn't say that in interviews, but there was something about actually the field of, sexuality and sexual medicine is kind of a newer field in science. So it's an area of spectacular discovery. So for somebody who's really interested in innovation, it was such a cool space to be in. Yeah. And I think it's also a lot of people run away from it. It's still a little bit taboo. There's a little bit of a blush factor, and yet it's part of the human experience. Right?
Yeah. And it's come a long way.
For sure.
I mean, our parents may have not wanted to talk about it, or their parents, but I think people feel a lot more comfortable, especially since all the male drugs did come out, and then it was on TV constantly and stuff, right? And you were just like, oh, I guess this is normal.
Like
somehow.
Now we're talking about this, right? We're talking about it on late night. We're talking about it on the golf course, whatever that was. And I was part of that, and yet I could not believe that really just as many women as men, actually more by all the data, struggle with issues in the bedroom. And yet we were doing nothing with this spectacular science that we had that understood the biological basis of issues for women, specifically desire. Women's most common issue is I lose my libido. Something changes and I no longer think about sex. I'm not interested in it the way that I used to be. And this affects millions of women, but it's kind of, nobody's talking about it. It's a little taboo, which I love. Thank you. We're going to talk about it because so many, women are affected by it. And I really, because of that, the spectacular science had emerged. I'm in this field. I'm struck by lightning, if you will, of what am I doing? Just continuing to be part of all the solutions as opposed to finding the solution for women. And I sold off that profitable company in men, went back to zero, and started basically this drive to get the first ever product for women's desire through the FDA.
The reason you were on these companies of your own is you really wanted more say in it.
Yes.
I mean, you didn't want to just suggest something to someone who suggests something.
That's right.
Hope it gets down the line and somebody politically feels like it might be a good enough idea and maybe they'll put some money towards your idea. And so you thought, I just want to go all in. I want to have the say. I want to be able to do what I want to do.
Yeah. Decision by committee doesn't work well for me.
No, it's difficult. I mean, some people might really like it, but I was, in my band, it was for the same reasons, really. It was about we want to do our sound our way. And we went through the process of a major label, so I can empathize with what you're talking about, working in a big corporation, because there's lots of rules of engagement there, and it's a business. And a lot of people in the music industry would struggle for years thinking it was just about art, and I'd be like, you signed a record contract.
Right.
When you sign your name on that record contract, it's now a business deal.
That's right.
And they're a bank, and you've got to perform. And,
so true.
But you were aware of that.
Yeah.
Because you had worked in the pharmaceuticals.
For sure.
You started these companies, and you saw the men getting all the attention.
I did.
And you saw a great opening for why is nobody talking about women.
A massive gap. And I think in life, so many times, maybe in a pattern, like when everyone's running away from it, in some regard, that has intrigued me to run toward it. Yeah. Like there's these interesting, sort of areas that should deserve exploration.
And why? Why were they running away from it? That's...
I think it's so deep. When I got on this path, it was unbelievable to me, the reaction. I really was a bit naive in it when I started, because to me it was science. There was a scientific discovery. It becomes very geeky, just double-blinded, placebo-controlled trials. Right. You're proving concepts. And yet the emotional reaction was really interesting in rooms. And I maybe hadn't anticipated that in the way that I should have. My parents tease all the time, like, could you have not done something in diabetes? And they say that because if you're not diabetic, you probably don't have a point of view. But I'll tell you what, everyone has a point of view about sex. And we have really deeply held beliefs that we're standing in the way of reason. And I think objectivity, and maybe even I'll go one step further, compassion for women who were really struggling with this in their lives, in their marriages, in their relationships. And that just continued to fuel me.
Yeah. And then in all of this, one question I really had about it is like you said, starting a pharmaceutical company is not a simple thing. Like, there must have been something you had to do to gather money.
Oh, yeah.
to get this together. Because you know, I see a lot of entrepreneur kind of inspirational people talking about go out there and win, you know. And it reminds me of Steve Martin did a skit on Saturday Night Live once where he's like, I'm going to teach you how to be a millionaire. First, get $1 million. Second, you know, and it's so bringing a company
to life.
Fruition and life, and hiring and all those, it took a lot of money. Like, how were you able to do that process of it? And what did you have a background that helped you in that process, or what?
Absolutely not. Nor did I have a rich uncle, it turned out, which was unfortunate. And when I just had this dream, I think to, you know, clean slate, do it on my own terms, you know, put effort behind things that I think made real impact. It was a lot about figuring out, well, what room do I need to get into to meet some of these people? And if they would just give me 5 minutes. And I really did sort of design who are people that, you know, fund innovation like this, and how the hell do I meet them? And I would just make a plan to try to get in the room. There was one gentleman in particular who ran this healthcare investing group, and I finally found my way into a room. It's a bit of professional stalking, right? And I got in the room and I got my 5 minutes and I said, great, I need to meet 5 of your friends. And then I met 5 of his friends and I said, great, I need to meet 5 of your friends. And it really grew that way. Like, it was just hustle. So
that's really, you know, this podcast is really when they asked me to do one, I was like, well, I don't want to do it just on like music and stuff, which would be obvious of what I do. I wanted to do it on the creative process, the creative element, I call it. And my theory is it's everywhere.
I agree.
It's at the core of everything we do in life, from making a shopping list to starting a company. And I think that's what's really interesting here is lots of people would imagine, like, I'd love to start a company, but I don't have a clue and stuff. And that's where creativity, I think, really comes in here, is that you have to get creative and you have to go out there and just do it and start asking for help. Because if you don't ask, then nobody knows, and you have to ask for it. And that's kind of what I'm hearing you say. You went out there, you asked people for help, and people said, okay, I'll give you a chance.
I think people would be surprised, right? If you're willing to just admit what you don't know, ask for help in situations. It has definitely been my experience that success comes from courage more than anything else. Just the courage to put yourself out there, to ask for the help, to try something that you might not be good at, but at least take the shot. And I think that's really such a piece. I love that you discuss creativity, because I agree with you. It is everywhere. You can learn from people to your left and your right at all times. There's something they have to teach you.
And my mission was, you know, in my schooling growing up, I say this all the time, so I'm sorry, but I just didn't see it anywhere. In my entire scholastic life in school, I saw teaching subject. Here's Russian history, here's this and that to learn. But nobody was saying, like, let's learn about creativity. Let's push creativity. Let's make creativity the focus of everything we do. So that's my mission, is to get everybody to rethink about what we're doing, because it's the idea behind everything. I want to say, you didn't develop this drug, right? There was somebody who...
A German company had
said...
had the beat on the science.
Do you want to take this to market, or
Yeah.
can you, or will you help, or
You know what's
you want to take it?
What's crazy about it is the German company had innovated it, and so it was being presented at scientific conferences. This, like, really the desire discovery is what I would affectionately call it. And they were at these meetings. I was at these meetings because I was running this company with one of the male drugs, and it was remarkable that they were going to shelve it. They were going to walk away, it is a very unusual story in science, right? They've discovered something spectacular. There's a huge market need, and they're literally going.
Yeah, do you know why?
Well, my shorthand for it is they said, "It's sex. We're German. We're out."
Oh.
Like we're not. And I say that, sort of tongue in cheek, but in truth,
I'm German,
right? I am too, Eckert, right? And I think that the truth of it is there was spectacular science, and yet there was an unbelievable societal reaction that they didn't want to wade into. And I think that's really the truth of it in simplest form. And so that was when they wanted to put it on the shelf. So many of the researchers in the field, they knew me from running this company with male, said,
yeah,
go do something about this. And I think to their reluctance at the beginning when I knocked on their door, like, hey, hi, I would like to, take over the science, continue the development program. I think they were like, we're not so sure. And ultimately, lucky for me, they decided to bet on me too.
Was it because you were a small company, you think, or because they wanted a big company, or they just didn't know?
I think they were going to do nothing with it. Like, I think they weren't shopping it. They weren't looking for, the Pfizers of the world to take it. None of it. And so I think it was just getting them to think a little differently as well. And they ultimately had a piece of my business and were successful in the end. But it was the first deal of that type they'd ever done.
And you had to be super creative again because the FDA wasn't going to be your friend. And let it happen.
It was brutal. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It was, I like to say, fighting the government for women's sexual pleasure is the road less traveled. Yeah. I don't know that I recommend it to everybody. But it really was an unbelievable story. If you think of the parallels, and I mean, look, it's a way to think of it contextually. When Viagra was introduced for men, it was a big moment. It's actually taught us a lot about men's health, well beyond sexual health. So it fueled the field with lots of investment and dollars and studies. And so when that got approved, it was deemed to meet such an important unmet medical need that the FDA rushed it to market in 6 months. It took me 6 years, 2 rejections, and I had 3 times as many patients worth of data. Yeah. It's really all you need to hear to understand we have a very different perspective on male and female sexuality.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can see that everywhere in our culture, just when we look at pay and everything. And I think it's changing, but we'll see. I've heard statistics of the pandemic has set it all back now. And so it's like, so hopefully we make some people aware today about it. When I'm going to tell you this personal story here, and you can laugh at me about it. When they first brought your name to me, I was like, I'm not sure who that is. And then they said, well, she developed this drug and all these things. And I was just like, in all caps, I was like, does that even exist?
Right.
Which I'm talking about the HSDD, hypoactive sexual drive disorder, which is what your drug is working to cure. I was like, does that even exist? And here's why. Kindergarten, I was put in school early, 4 years old. Didn't know my ABCs or anything, so I just kind of tried to hide out. But there was a little girl in that class who just kept following me everywhere. One day at story time, we're sitting by the piano, and the teacher's telling the story. And she comes up behind me and kisses me on the back of my neck.
Wow.
Teacher sees her.
Yeah.
She gets in trouble, makes her go sit in the corner.
Aww.
Later that day, leaving school, she and 2 of her friends jumped me on the playground and pushed me down and proceeded to kiss me for about 2 minutes until I'm dragged up. Okay, this pattern followed me in life.
Wow.
My friend in grade school's sister used to push me down and kiss me. In high school, the star quarterback's girlfriend secretly wanted to date me, and I just kept on running into this in my life. And I had developed, not to mention being in a rock band in the 80s touring, you ran into rampant experiences like that. So I had known this thing about women long ago, and the secret was that women like sex a lot more than men, even though you don't see that in our movies and everything. It's always some guy, got to get that girl, she's so hot.
Right.
Girls like it even more than you do, bro.
Yeah.
And if this is something that needs to be dealt with, it's got to be a big issue.
Yeah.
Because I know girls like sex.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I know they want pleasurable experience.
Yeah.
We all do. It's a great release in life. And I think it's really important in any relationship. So this is a pretty big problem that needs to be dealt with. And I think as long as there's 26, did you say drugs for men?
26 now, 26.
I think we need to start working on the other side and making
the
it
score,
fair up.
maybe. Right, that's right.
Your story, though, you get it to finally clear the FDA.
Yes.
And you get the company to eventually sell for a lot of money.
I did.
Which was the success story, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You used your creativity, you got it across the line, everything worked. And then you even got the company or the drug back?
Yeah, I did.
Or is it the company back as
company,
well?
completely.
Company,
yes.
all of it. Because the company you sold it to was not doing
what they
anything
said.
with it. As I understand it, they had some real problems with their stock and
they did.
The company fell apart and you were able to even get it back again. So it's really amazing. What was that?
The company's still around today. It's Bausch, like, the eye products and things like that. They had all these different, and they were one of the biggest companies I could have ever sold to. It was really the dream come true, right? I finally passed the hurdle. Science won, women won, after a very public conversation about this. And thankfully, the FDA talked to women who were dealing with this. I mean, that's what they're there to do, right? They're there to actually address unmet needs of patients, and who should we be talking to but the patients themselves. So they spent really years talking to women with the issue. Ultimately, the science won. 2 days later, I sold the business. And that was this, now it's going to be everywhere and they're going to help and they're going to do things. We were tiny.
Was that
we were
goal
30 people
to sell it? Or was the goal were you surprised? Like, we got this, we're going to bring it to market and, wait, somebody wants to buy us? I mean, what
goal was to change the conversation about women and sex forever. It has always been the goal. And I think to having that always the through line of everything we've done is why this story has been as interesting as it is. No, we didn't set out to create, $1 billion product. We basically just wanted women to have access to this. Men had all these different solutions. Women deserved many more than one. But that company afforded me the means, like they could do it in a way that the 30 of us could never do it. Right. They would educate and they would do the marketing and all of those things. And they bought it and they put it on the shelf. Yeah. So I sort of rescued it from a shelf.
Really bizarre,
isn't it?
To me,
totally walked away. Spent all that money. Totally walked away, and then I felt really sad about it for a while, and then I kind of kicked myself in the butt, and I said, "Not on my watch." And I went back to that company and I said, "Give it back." And they laughed. They said, "We paid you a lot of money for it," and I said, Yeah, but you also agreed to do these things, which they weren't doing, and it gave me leverage. And ultimately, the entire company was returned to us.
You had a good
we kept
lawyer
the money.
And a good contract.
Great lawyer.
Which, I'm not a huge fan of lawyers, but if you're going to get in a big business deal, get the best lawyer you can possibly find because it's worth it every time. And so you had a best effort clause in there.
Yes.
And you managed to get it back, which is great.
Yeah. Best effort. I actually struck best efforts and I said it has to be really specific. And that was my saving grace, is that they agreed to the amount of, educational dollars they would put toward it and things like that. And they weren't doing any of it. So it ended up being completely returned, which has been maybe the way it always should have played out, because now we know women are getting on it every day.
And you have say in it again?
We do. That's right.
So we should have confetti popping right here.
Exactly.
Maybe you guys can put it in.
That's right.
That was a big success. I'd like to go back to your humble beginnings, because I like to talk to guests about kind of where they came from and their upbringing. This Staring at the World comes from a lyric in a song I wrote, Staring at the World from Our Own Little Idaho, which is really about... We see the world from our perspectives that we see it. We have these filters, and it kind of comes from where you were, how you were raised, people who are around you, what they told you to believe or not. And sometimes you kick that out when you grow up, but a lot of times it's really embedded in there. So can you talk to us a little bit about where you were raised, what your
Yeah.
family life was like,
Yeah.
and growing up, and because I know there's some interesting stuff that happened
Yeah.
there too. I read. So tell me more
Unusual
about that.
childhood for sure. It's funny. We were both put in school early. I was in kindergarten at 4 too.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
You're
we
always
were really-
behind.
right?
You're
You are
always the littlest
always-
one, the
we're
youngest
so
one,
sure.
last one to drive.
I know. I think your parents are so proud of you. They're like, "Oh, they're smart. They need to go." And
Not my
you
mom.
end
No,
up
my
being
mom was like, just, I want to go
please
back
go.
to work.
Please get out.
You take them.
That's so funny. Yeah, my childhood, I'm so grateful. I'll tell you this one thing, and I have 2 big brothers, and we talk about this a lot. When we would ask our parents for help, they would always say the very same thing. And it could be like, I just want a leg up on the science project. I wanted help with this homework, whatever it is. They would always say the same 4 words back to us. What do you think? And at the time, it was so annoying.
I think you should help me.
Right? I do think that. I think the conditioning was you've got to form your own opinion. You've got to be resourceful. You've got to go and ask a lot of people. I think they knew when they would turn us down that we would then go and campaign for others, if you will, to help us. And we were getting all of these different perspectives. And I think that sort of summarizes a lot of my childhood. I moved from Rochester, New York, blue collar town. And my dad came home one day. I was I was about 9 years old. And he said, "Would you like to go to Fiji?" And I was like, "What's Fiji?"
Yeah.
To your point,
Across town or something?
in
Is that a
your little
store?
world,
Yeah.
right? In my little snowbound world. And he said, "Well, go look at the globe." And I spun the globe. It was the other side of the world. I said, "I'd like to go to Fiji." And he said, "Great, because we're moving there."
Yeah.
And that started this constant moving in my life where I changed schools every year from the 4th grade through my senior year of high school. And I think, at every time I was moving, I was like, no, I just made friends. I was just kind of, I'd move from the outside of the room to inside of the room. And yet I'm so grateful for it now.
Yeah.
Because it was flexing this muscle or developing this habit of being thrown into situations where you're the misfit and finding your way. And I think it gives you a lot of independence of, you're not the jock or the this or the that. You just are defining it kind of as you go along, and you're getting to meet so many different people. It really flexed my curiosity muscle.
At the time, though, you must have been like, this sucks. Like, it's so hard.
So hard. I mean, can you imagine
You have to keep
4
walking
different high
into that again
schools
and again.
and stuff? Really tough.
I think about, I had gone to a Catholic school when I was in 2nd and 3rd grade because they had free tuition. So my
Okay.
mom had put me in that. And then we moved out to the suburbs. And so by 4th grade, I had to go back into this public school system. And first day of class, the teacher calls on me, and I stand up in the middle of the aisle with my book proper to read it. And the whole class busts out laughing at me because they're just like, we don't do that.
That's
here,
not how
and
they do
stuff.
it.
Whereas
Yeah.
the Catholic school was really intense and stuff. So how intense was the situation? Were they private schools? Were they public schools?
In Fiji,
Especially going to different cultures.
Oh, amazing. So in Fiji, I went to a Fijian school. Part of my curriculum was how to build an outhouse. It was a long way from Rochester.
Nice.
Handy.
Handy.
One of my secret skills, and it just was so dramatically different. And I'll tell you a crazy story. I went back to the Fiji we all know today is like the Fiji of 5-star resorts and Fiji water.
Yeah,
and yet
right.
it's a culture that didn't get television until the 90s.
Yeah.
In a way that made it so wonderful, right? And pristine and so apart from the rest of the world. But I went back when I could finally afford it to go back and go to one of those 5-star resorts in Fiji. And I landed in Nandi, their airport, and I heard somebody go, "Cindy." And I looked around, and I'm in my 30s at this point, and I'm like, "Hi." She's like, "You don't remember, but we went to school together." And I said, "Surely I look different in the last, several decades." And she said, "You're still the palest girl I've ever seen."
Yeah.
And she was, I was so fascinating to them too in that class. So Fiji it was wonderful, but it kept going from there. And I think it was really tough. I see myself even to this day as a misfit.
Yeah, me too.
in every room, right?
Me too.
So,
Yeah.
and I think that is my whole life. I've been a bit of a misfit in the room, and yet it has afforded me the ability to kind of go against the grain.
Yeah, I think it is a lot of what I'm talking about, though, of all of that really did bring something to your person. That
Yeah.
I also read your dad was friends with Ronnie Reagan.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you hang out with Ronnie?
Yes, for sure. He gave me a jar of jelly beans when I was a little girl, and I treasured it. And we packed one year, and it broke. And I can remember how sad I was that it used to be when you moved to, your boxes would arrive like 2 months later. I don't know what happened, but we were moving overseas. So my dad is very much an adventurer.
Yeah.
He is the guy that will try sort of anything, and that spirit. My mom's the polar opposite of that. So it's a bit of a balance, I think, for us. But it's really he was a wild child.
My point of knowing the president of the time was though that it also brought a world to you of like, you don't have to fear this situation either.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you're supposed to, like, the president. Oh my God. You know,
right.
But it was somehow normal to you.
Yeah.
So I can't help but think, like, when you were going to meet VCs about money and stuff like that, you didn't have to fear it because I'm friends with Ronnie Reagan. You know, what do I have to, who are you?
That's funny.
Kind of perspective. Like, I'm wondering if those things helped you move through what some people would have said a very difficult situation.
I think that's a really cool thought, actually. I just reflecting on that, I do feel that everyone is on an equal footing, right? And we're all just human.
But society doesn't always...
They don't behave that way.
Right.
I totally agree with you. I think I am lucky that way, that I'm not intimidated by going in. I'm fascinated.
Yeah.
More than anything else, I hope I go through life with a fascination, like that I get to sit down and talk to you. Like, this is cool, right? Like, how lucky am I, though, to be in the room with people who've done really cool things and try to understand understand why they did it and how they did it. And that like curiosity, I think, levels the playing field if you enter every conversation like that.
Yeah. And I'm going to say to the guys in the booth, turn some cooler air in here, will you? For one. And for two, I also felt like I hadn't, the first time I ever went to LA was when the record company flew me first class on a plane and put me in a limo and sent me to a hotel. And before that, I'd never been on a plane.
Yeah.
All I knew was Milwaukee and Waukesha, playing the local bars. And because of that, we were able to develop our thing and our sound. And I had confidence in that, in what we were doing. So when we went out there, we had an attitude about ourselves and stuff like that. And it wasn't to put people off. It's just that, we had that kind of confidence or belief in what we were wanting to do. And what I saw in your story was that same kind of thing. Like, you had this, I believe in this makes sense to me. And even when you run into these walls, somehow you got to get back up and
that's right. Got to keep
walking
going
through it again.
And I think to some extent, like, that's part of the process, isn't it? Like, the walls being thrown up or testing, how much do I believe in it? What's my conviction there? And also the challenge of what's the workaround. I mean, I think along the way,
the workaround. That's my word too. It's like,
right?
I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, when I had to figure out how to record music in the studio, and I had to figure out, when I graduated high school, I tell people this when I'm doing shows, for my career advancement, I was a drummer in high school. For my career advancement, I went down to the music store and bought electric guitar so I could learn to write songs.
Wow.
And that was it, but it's supposed to be a joke when I say it, like, well, poop, that was terrible. Why don't you go to law school or something,
Right.
But to me, that made sense.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did to pursue it. And I think our stories are similar in that way. And anyone who is using workarounds and creativity to get kind of down that road of something they believe in. And now, since you've had the success, you've started some companies, Pink Ceiling and the Pinkubator, which are working on helping out other women who have dreams like you. You want to talk about that a little bit?
To your point, like, of how, while we've come so far, have we come far enough?
Yeah.
And what's happened since the pandemic?
I have 5 daughters, so.
I mean, right? So listen to this stat. You're going to be sad. So of all the venture money, so all that money that backs these ideas and companies like the companies I've built, 2% of that money goes to women.
Yeah.
So you're basically saying that half the population has 2% of the good ideas.
Right.
And that's just an injustice.
Yeah.
And it's also an opportunity to look where other people aren't looking. So for me, having gone through that journey with the FDA, feeling an immense double standard, I really got to witness, I think, what it means to advocate, for yourself and for each other. And women showed up. Like, women were willing to share their most personal, embarrassing stories with a federal agency to change it for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think after that, I was inspired that that's what I've got to do, right? How am I going to use this, good fortune to now help other people get there? So that's really the genesis of the Pink Ceiling and the Pinkubator. And I look for those crazy firsts, where people are laughing you out of the room because you actually dared to say it out loud,
right.
and help them bring it to fruition if I can.
And you look for, I imagine, people have that glimmer in their eye of
Yes.
just, I have to do this.
Yes, absolutely.
This is my purpose. What I need to do. Also, this idea of my kids wake up sometimes. My daughters, they just want to be famous and rich, like right now. And I'm always looking at them like, well, that takes a tremendous amount of work.
Sure.
Then they're like, well, this guy over here put up like some videos and he's a billionaire now, and
Right.
I want to do that too. And I'm what I'm seeing is like when these huge chunks of money are just going to these isolated places, we have a real income disparity.
Yeah, we do.
And income disparity for women too.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah.
is part of your mission just kind of trying to solve some of that
Yes, for
in
sure.
the world today?
Yes.
Because it can't sustain that way. Everybody knows it. But
That's
in the
right.
meantime, it's just kind of moving on that way.
It is. No, and it's also, it's funny, that's what I'm speaking about at South by, is a bit of what you've just detailed, like that instant gratification, what we see presented as like these, overnight successes and what it might really look like behind the scenes, I think, to get to those places. But for me, I'm championing the people who are the misfits in the room, who don't have other people bet on their ideas. And I think if I can get them to outcomes like mine, the guarantee is that they will pay it forward and they will invest in the kind of ideas they want to see in this world.
Right.
So when you start doing that in a way that's diverse and has different people at the table inventing and, choosing what we invest in, you really do change the game. Like, right? That's how it happens. It's the multiplier effect that gets me really excited.
Right. And I'm just going to say, because you're friends with Ronnie Reagan, this is not the trickle-down theory. We're not doing that. This is actually investing in other people's ideas.
Now, in fairness, I was 10 when I met him, so I might not be close friends, but yeah, for sure.
You knew him.
Yeah.
You knew Ronnie.
Yeah.
But we are in Austin, Texas, and South by Southwest is going on while we're filming that. And so that's why you're in town here today speaking to people about it.
Yeah, I am. Just really about entrepreneurship and even a bit of I'll call it the Shark Tank culture. And I love Shark Tanks. Great show. And I even look at young kids who watch it and are using, to your point of like traditional schooling, that's, rote memorization of facts. Like, they're actually thinking through and exploring. I have a goddaughter who came to visit and she said, like, can we sit down and watch Shark Tank tonight? She said, I want you to tell me what you would invest in. I said, we're going to watch it, but you're going to tell me what you would invest in. And, she has her calculator out. She's like, is that the valuation? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I would have not even known these words at this age. But it has set up a construct that funding is the destination, right? If I just get the big check, I'm done. I've arrived.
Yeah.
And my experience is, hustling to get any checks to fund your idea, you start to sweat because you're like, whoo, I've got to pay that back, and then I've got to make them a return on that. Yeah. And so it presents a very false, I think, image of what entrepreneurship really looks like in the day-to-day. And
this idea that money forever is going to bring the happiness feeling of endgame, and it doesn't exist.
That's right.
Really, I think money, what I say to my daughters is it can give you freedoms.
Yes.
In this world that a lot of people don't have, but it's not going to make you happy. You got to find that some other way for yourself. The thing I don't like about Shark Tank is I see these guys sit back there and it's kind of like, well, what's in it for me?
Right.
Kind of mentality. And I don't think that's the right perspective about it. I think trying to help people bring their ideas to fruition as much as you can is more the right way to do it than not necessarily how many more millions can I make off your idea. When we were first starting out, you could go in a recording studio if you could write a good song and you could get yourself in there.
Yeah.
You could send it to the record company and they might give you a contract and try to develop. There was a department that would try to develop the artist into something, right?
Yeah, that's
cool. It was cool. In the 90s, though, somewhere it changed where they were only signing acts who not only was the record done, finished, produced by someone great, but they wanted to see like 500,000 in sales already before they even signed you and all this kind of stuff. And I noticed that doesn't help foster creativity there. That's just about trying to grab fans and money as much as you can. And I thought that was a bad business idea.
Yeah. Ooh,
it might come out good for, I guess, a few individuals, but it's not.
Yeah.
Even people like Warren Buffett say this is not a sustainable thing.
Correct.
If just a few people have money, you don't have a market anymore.
That's right.
So we really have to develop everyone's crazy ideas.
Okay, I love this. I'm going to have to quote you on that. I think that's such a good way to describe the state of things today, like the taking and developing people.
Yeah.
Right? And helping them through that process because they do have a great idea. That's really like, now I'm going to describe the Pinkubator in that way because it's sleeves rolled up, right? I've stepped on these landmines. Don't step on them. I can tell you that that's a watch out. And like, how do I help bring you up that kind of learning curve of just some of the things you have to know to see it through. But yeah, it's not about like, well, wait, how much, there is such a, if you don't listen to me, it's at your own peril, to things that is not constructive to creativity.
Yeah, I've seen some of the big VC guys in interviews saying that. The interviewer will say like, well, how do I get into this and stuff? And the guy just, you can't, and I'm just like, that's wrong. That's just not the way.
I've been in a lot of those rooms, by the way. I've been on the receiving end of a lot of the ha-ha-has.
I bet you have. But here's some words, though, that I found that you were really important to you in your Pink Ceiling and Pinkubator companies. You talked about curiosity being really an important thing you look for people, right?
I do.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I think the most successful people I know are insatiably curious, and that quest for learning never turns off. I'll tell it in a story. The first company I had with one of the male products, it required a little in-office procedure. Simple Band-Aid at the end of it, but it was a new technique. And so when we launched it, we'd film the techniques of all these different surgeons around the world. And we showed up at a medical conference and we started, showing the videos of these different techniques. Look out at the sea of the audience. And I thought, 99% of the audience was like this. Shaking their head like, it's not how you do it. And 1% of the audience was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Who was the best in the world? The 1% that were leaning in, learning more. It's like incredible to me.
I found the exact same thing in life.
That's it. And that's why it's so important. I mean, even when I'm talking to founders and falling in love with their ideas, it's much more important that I fall in love with them and understand, the jockey, if you will, instead of the horse. Like, what is it that drives them and how do they constantly learn? And I'll ask a lot of questions around that just so they see that they are somebody who's curious. If you are, you will be open-minded enough to change when you have to. And inevitably in entrepreneurship, there will come a moment where that path will be like, not going to work, and you're going to have to move. And I think only people who have that open-mindedness can do it.
I ran into the exact same thing working with different musicians in the industry. Same thing of lower level people would just be just like, your music is so simplistic. It's just stupid, And then I would work with some of the best people in the industry and they'd be like, oh, that's amazing.
Yes.
How did you do that?
Yes.
What did you do? So I learned, like, especially anyone who comes up to me and says they're a smart person, I should listen to them. I know to back away quickly because I find the smartest people in the world listen.
Yes.
They don't talk. They want to know. They want information. And so that's a brilliant premise philosophy to have. You also talk about humility.
Yes. I mean, I hope that at a
Kind
minimum,
of the same thing we're talking about.
Yeah, there's like a, willingness to ask for help and never faking that, never playing a part. I guess, is that, of, showing up in the room and pretending you have all the answers. I think it's been a great freedom for me that I'm willing to be considered silly or, not, I don't know what I'm talking about. And it doesn't hurt me that they think that I'm just going to tell the truth. And I think that really does in every way set you free, right? Just as the saying goes.
It does. I think it's super important too. I think it goes right along with curiosity.
Yes.
If you're humble, you are curious.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
And it is a good energy to have. I find often too when people are like saying something negative about me or cutting me down.
Yeah.
For some reason in life, the pendulum would always swing in my way whenever that happened.
Yeah.
And so I learned to trust that energy in life. Like
That's
I didn't
good.
have to fight back. I didn't have to get revenge with someone because somehow the universe just, if you can kind of move with that energy, you're in a good place.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know that's esoteric, but that's worked for me.
Yeah.
So
I think
just
maybe
tell
you
people
can't
about
be
it.
from the towns we're from too and have too many airs, right? You come from almost the humble background of that, and that's something wonderful about that.
Yeah, but those Milwaukee was so not in the trend that it gave us a wide open palette to do whatever you want to do.
Awesome.
So we had us and the Violent Femmes, like two of the craziest bands.
Love it. Yeah.
You never would imagine coming out of the Midwest, but there it was. And you also talk about gratitude, the attitude of gratitude, which I heard a yogi once say that too. He just looked at the camera. He said, "Gratitude gets you there, man." And I heard you say it too.
Sure.
And I was like, that's a real important quality to have in the business world, the pharmaceutical world, I imagine.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's the fundamental, right, of life, of do you wake up every day you make choices, conscious choices. And I think to go through life with a sense of appreciation and choosing to be appreciative makes all the difference. I think in our darkest days, and I hire against that quality. I think you can figure that out about somebody fairly quickly of how they approach things. Do they have a gratitude about where they find themselves in life? And when we were being literally punched in the face, if you will, by the FDA, we still together kind of marveled at what we had this opportunity to do.
Yeah.
Like, how cool was it that these women shared their stories with us? These doctors came to the FDA to educate them with us. And so I think we always had that sense of gratitude, even still, and it saw us through. It'll see you through the worst times.
It will. I like the story you told on one podcast I watched where you said, "We're going to fight the FDA." And one of your people said, "Is that even possible?" And you said, "I don't know. We're going to find out."
That's right.
And that's kind of the way you have to approach life. If there's something you want to do out there, don't be afraid to dive in.
For sure.
And do it. Well, I'm grateful you came and talked to us here in Austin. And I'm hoping you have a great speech.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's a crazy house down there.
It is.
I try to not go down there
I
during
bet
this
you
time of
stay
year
away.
because it's pretty nuts. But is there anything else that I missed that you want to talk about here?
I've taken all your restaurant recommendations, which I appreciate. I'm grateful to spend time with you. Thank you for this opportunity and to introduce me to a whole different audience. I really do appreciate it. So thank you for having me. I hope they'll follow me at Cindy Pink CEO and just be part of some of the change I think we're making, betting on the underdogs.
Yeah. And women get out there and proactive, and let's kind of even things, because I'm a big believer in balance. And you can't have just 2% going to one group of people and expect any balance in the world.
That's right.
So let's figure that out. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, everybody. That was an amazing interview. It helps so much to be in person and talk to people and really get a feel for what they're thinking, how they feel. I really enjoyed that. Creativity comes in the most unexpected places. Someone starts a pharmaceutical company, and it takes a lot of creativity to make it happen, and hopefully helping women in the process. So I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe, rate, review, pass it around to your friends. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Staring at the World with BoDeans, Kurt Newman. Please be sure to download, subscribe, rate, and review, and keep listening wherever you get your podcasts.